The sight of Saudi officials showing journalists the inside of cupboards in their Istanbul embassy, as if to prove there were literally no skeletons in the closet, is one of the strangest things I have ever seen on TV news. It would have been comical were it not so sinister. The reality is that Jamal Khashoggi, the Washington Post columnist and critic of the Saudi regime, entered that embassy on the 2nd of October and was never seen again. Claims he was murdered inside continue to mount. Turkey believes he was killed and dismembered by a hit squad from Saudi Arabia who arrived specifically for that purpose. The kingdom rejects the allegations, but has offered no evidence that he's alive. What happened, none of us know. But what we do know is that we prop up this kingdom, already drenched with blood on its hands from the impending famine in Yemen, by selling them billions of pounds of arms, goods and services. This Saudi regime is not a trade partner, but a pariah. It's time we stood by our so-called British values and started treating it as such.
Afua, at the risk of having you scream so much, you lose what's left of your voice, and well done. I know you're battling through, so thank you very much. I want to just briefly, while you, if you'll allow me, play something from Donald Trump speaking on the 13th of October.
Well, there are many other things we could do, but when we take away $110 billion of purchases from our country, that hurts our workers, that hurts our factories, that hurts all of our companies. You know, you're talking about 500,000 jobs. So we do that, we're really hurting our country a lot more than we're hurting Saudi Arabia.
And that, in reality, I think is the truth, Afua. If we lived in a perfect world, then that would be fine. We live in and yours is a perfect solution in a perfect world. We live in an imperfect world. I loathe what I think has happened to that journalist. I think almost certainly what happened to that journalist. And as details emerge, they are sickening and harrowing as to what it would appear how they tortured him before they probably killed him. I loathe what's happening in the Yemen. But the reality is, by Britain stopping that, and it's impossible to get a direct figure. We tried at the radio station I work at, LBC. There's around 240,000 people probably work in the armaments. Let's say 10% might be at risk. How would putting thousands of British men and women out of work make the situation better? All they would do, I'm sorry to say, is they go and buy the weapons from the US, they go and buy the weapons from China, they go and buy the weapons from Japan. So, in summary, sadly, we live in an imperfect world. Yours is a perfect solution, and it doesn't fit.
You know, I hear you, Nick, and just to give you a figure, I know it's difficult to get precise figures on jobs and money, but this is the amount of military equipment we've sold to Saudi Arabia since the start of the war in Yemen in 2015. The figure that we have is £4.7 billion. And I just want to play you a clip from the Shadow Foreign Secretary for Labour, Emily Thornberry, and this is what she says.
There are certain standards which we have to uphold, and the Crown Prince is not upholding them, and we should at long last start saying so. The British people have had enough, Labour has had enough, I've had enough. What's the matter with the government?
You know, Nick, I hear what you're saying. Nobody dismissively writes off thousands of jobs in Britain and income into our treasury, much needed income. But everybody accepts that we have lines. We wouldn't supply arms, for example, to North Korea. There are regimes that we would not do business with, even though it would bring in more money and create more jobs. We do have values and we do have standards. And while I'm not dismissive of the benefits of doing business with Saudi Arabia, I don't think that these things are separate. The reason that Saudi Arabia knows that it can behave like this is because Donald Trump wants $110 billion worth of arms deals, that we want the billions that we have invested in Saudi, and that is why it feels able to behave in complete violation of every international rule and standard. And I think that we have to take responsibility for our role in that. I can sense you wanting to come in.
I do, yeah. I think sometimes it's a case of you need to keep your enemies closer. Do you know what I'm saying? Whereby, if we let those arms deals slip, we wouldn't know what was going over there then, would we? So there's a lot of bigger picture behind this than what you probably think. The other thing is, we don't actually know for 100% sure that this geezer was killed in the embassy, do we?
Yes, we've heard Donald Trump giving Saudi a way out. Mate, this was a rogue.
It's not a way out. It's not a way out. He's justifying what he's doing by saying basically the same as I am. If you don't, you can lose would you go and face these people that work in these factories in this country and go, sorry, lads, you're out of a job because we don't like what's going on over there? It's going to happen anyway. They'll just go to Russia or somewhere like that. Yeah, it's insane. They will do it. So you're not going to sort out Middle Eastern politics by not selling them some gear. But what you are going to do is keep your finger on the pulse and know exactly how much is going and in some respects where you can work out what's being done with that kit. If you can see what's
You're
going
speaking as if there's no cost. There's only a benefit. There's jobs and there's income. As if there's no cost to the decisions we make. This is about what kind of country we are and what we stand for. And everybody in this country stands to lose if we don't have values that we live by.
So, Afua, what I would say on this is that I think us stopping selling, because I think the Saudi regime is terrible for various different reasons, not just their involvement in Yemen. It's shocking, and, you know, we could go on for quite some time saying why and all the things that they do wrong. So I don't support that regime in any way, shape or form. But what I would say is just us independently saying we're not going to sell you arms, I think it's going to make no difference whatsoever to their regime and what they do, because I was clearly quite bored this week because I read Saudi Arabia's 2030 Economic Development Plan. That's how bored I was. Wow. I know.
Fun time at Jubilee Mansion.
Yeah. I know, tell me about it. And actually, if you look at what they're saying in terms of how they view their economic development, they want to reduce their dependency on oil exports. And what they're saying is they spend a huge, I think it's the world's third biggest military spender, and they only spend 2% of that spend within their kingdom. So their ongoing strategy, what they want to do is they want to actually build arms, manufacturing capability within the kingdom. So they don't want to stop. Yeah, they don't want to stop their bombing and their killing and all the rest of it. That's not their intention. They do want to localise their spending. So I think us saying to Saudi we're not going to supply you anymore is irrelevant. It won't stop them. The only thing that we could do that potentially would have impact is try and coordinate some centralised attempt to say to Saudi, this is wrong. But everybody, like the US, they supplied bombs that killed school children on a bus, and they still sell to them. So unless everyone comes together, your Russias, your Chinas, your US...
And just before I bring you in, Trevor, the US and the UK together completely dwarf all other suppliers of arms to Saudi Arabia. We are the second, and our role is significant. It's not that every other nation is supplying arms in the same way we are. We are the leader after the US in supplying arms. So if we decided to change our stance, it would send a very powerful message to other people on the international stage. Trevor?
Yeah, well, I think before we talk ourselves into let's do nothing, I mean, let me be clear. I do understand why this is important. Your point, Phil, and the government's given us a statement which says that takes its export responsibilities very seriously, operates one of the most robust export control regimes in the world. The defence sector supports 7,500 small and medium-sized enterprises in the UK supply chain alone, with export orders worth £8.7 billion over the last 5 years. Now, I get all of that, and that's why we probably won't do anything on arms. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything. And I think Afua's completely right here. We can't just go, oh, it's a bit of a problem for us, let's leave it to somebody else.
Well, they're not.
I mean, I think
they're not doing that. Foreign Secretary's spoken.
Yeah, the Foreign Secretary issued a really explosive, dangerous piece of paper. I think we can do some more serious things. I think that actually one of the things we could do, which I think would hurt the Saudi royal family far more than losing a couple of planes, is simply refuse their tourist visas. We should refuse their student visas. Actually, these things are more important to the Saudi royal family, who are the people who actually can make this decision than any of the other stuff.
And do these things, or stop selling the arms and do these things.
Well, we've got arms deals in train. I don't think we can stop them, and I don't think in reality we are going to. No. I mean, let's be realistic. We're not going to stop them, but that doesn't mean we must do nothing. I think we can punish, and I'm being specific here, the Saudi royal family, because the access to, frankly, British shops and British companies is more important to them as individuals than anything that they can do. And your point that they'll buy the arms from somewhere else is probably right. But we can punish them, and we ought to be punishing them.
I don't disagree with that. And having been to Saudi a number of times myself, I find it extremely repressive coming from the outside in. So, yeah, I do believe they need... They are one of these people that do need reining in a bit. Yeah. But like I say, with the arms thing in particular, you know, it's better the devil you know sometimes. You know
the other thing I'd do is I'd impound all those Ferraris that the Saudi princes drive round central London every day tomorrow.
Stacking up the parking
tickets. And I bet you there'd be a conversation pretty quickly about how to deal with it.
The problem that I have here is hypocrisy, because There are other countries which do similar things, and we condemn them immediately and unequivocally. When a journalist is murdered in Russia, within 24 hours, we've issued a statement condemning it.
Well,
it took our Foreign Secretary a week.
They have condemned the killing, the believed
to comment. It took a week to comment. And now there's this, well, it would be nice if we did something. And I think that it's very difficult for us to hold ourselves out as a country that has some moral leadership in the world, as we do, and at the same time be very selective about when we enforce it against people who we consider our friends. And if we want Saudi Arabia to be our friend, then we're going to have to change what we say about what our values are.